with my pinky finger. This is fancy.
So
we have to be fancy. Yeah. I've set the standard.
We're Transfix. I'm Hugh Jassel.
I'm Jetta Ray.
I'm Gage.
And we're going to talk about our Tranifesto for Transfix. And the Fix Is In, our YouTube channel.
Yes.
So we like to create community, and we do that by creating events and creating fundraisers and creating ideas and making things happen.
And we share community by always trying to be available for any other organizations or spaces that need us. I actually see us as sort of a trans A-team. You know, people need us. People call us when they're like, oh, I need this thing. You know, there's this space, there's this event I want to have, and we get it done. And I think that's really important, that rather than having like a centralized, like, you know, mission statement and an agenda, you know, we can be where people call us.
Yes. And also we provide food.
We do.
At our events. Food and drinks, usually. So we're sharing in that way as well.
And we build community because community is essential. An inclusive, strong, well-connected, and healthy trans community is essential for building these sort of networks and relationships of solidarity, support, and mutual aid that help us as trans people survive. I think we've all been in this place. I know I'm speaking for myself here, that I've been in places where if it wasn't for the community I had, I wouldn't have made it. And, you know, that is, I think, that essential basis of community is getting us all through. And that's why it's important to build community and why we do this.
Absolutely. And let's talk about what defines community. I think that that's important because we can talk about community, but what is community? And for me, community is... The way I look at community is a shared contract, a shared social contract. You know, I am a trans woman, I am a queer. You know, if I encounter you, if I meet you, you know, I'm gonna, you know, if I meet you, I have this, not expectation, but I guess this, like, hope that, you know, I can trust you, that, you know, I can rely on you and you can rely on me, you know? And so that's what's really important for me, is communities, is building up this confidence in a sort of social contract where we can all be available and all assist each other in the ways that we can, you know, to each according to their means. Because community has saved my life. People that I don't know that well, people that I've never met have, you know, saved me and helped me. And I want to do that. So that's what community is for me.
Cool. Gage.
Yeah, and I think that another important thing that we like to talk about is ways that we can expand that definition of community, and not just, you know, trying to include all sorts of trans identities, but also to think about, are these events, you know, accessible to youth? A lot of LGBTQ queer.
You have to say the whole thing now that you started.
X, Y, Z, W, you know, all the letters.
Alphabet soup.
Quilt bag.
Soup. Quilt bag?
Yeah, it's the new one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that stands for anymore. I'm old. But, you know, a lot of queer and trans spaces and events occur in bars or dance clubs that are 21 plus. That's a major barrier. Like, where are youth supposed to go? Where are people who don't want to drink supposed to go? Don't want to be around drunk people? Or who want to be able to have a conversation just because they want to be in a space that isn't hella loud. So, and I think that there's other things. There's racial inclusion, there's ability. There's a lot of things of, like, who do we define as who do we want in our community? How do we manage to expand that? How do we manage to make those healthy networks? So, like, how do we take care of each other? So we can be, you know, struggle together as trans people, as a strong community.
We put a lot of stock and effort into survival.
Yes.
As Transfix.
For sure.
We try to be very pragmatic and very, like, directly addressing community needs rather than, hey, give us some money and we'll put it towards some cause later.
Yeah. For me, community is really important. I am 35, which is actually older than Gage, and I don't feel like I'm old. So I'm just throwing that out there. And I've been out since I was 14, so this was my 21 years of queer. I've been out as queer since I was 14. And what that has meant for me has evolved over time. And community is really important to me. I went to queer youth groups when I was 17, 18. To like maybe 20, and then didn't have that in my life, and I've lived pretty much only in rural places other than San Francisco and Oakland. So having that community base is, like when you live in a small town and you're queer, you're friends with everybody. You have to be to survive. And so that kind of community is where I come from. And if it wasn't for the elders in the community who came forward to support us as youth, and also for the youth ourselves when I was younger, I don't know where I would be. I wouldn't have had these kind of anecdotal stories and these histories to help find my path. And my path is somewhat divergent from other people that I've known, but it's something that's really important to me, and also the kind of community that I want to see, which is, outside of the normal queer culture. Like sex positive, but not sex centric. Libation positive, but not not libation centric, whatever your libation is. And youth accessible, and low to no cost accessible. And also, just talking about ideas. I think that's really profoundly important. Like, that's one of the ways that we all met is discussion of ideas. Also, snark. Which is the discussion of ideas, and that's one of the things that brought us together.
Yeah, I think I also came out when I was 14. I've been out for 16 years, so that's kind of a math problem for you. To figure out how old I am. I think I grew up, Merrimack Valley, 35, 40 minutes north of Boston. I was the only out queer kid in my high school, in my class, and like someone else in a year behind me came out after I did. But one thing that struck me, like there's a GSA in my high school, there's a lot of people who are only, whispering of like, oh, don't out me, but to other queer kids who came out after high school and everything. One thing that struck me was that when I moved away from there, like right before I turned 18, I was in New Orleans, and I've lived in, like the Pioneer Valley and Portland and now the Bay Area. One thing that struck me is that the bigger the queer community you get, the more people like to divvy it up, and, it's totally cool, that there's enough people around that you're like, I don't like talking to that person because, we have nothing in common and I think they're a jerk. That's fine. But people trying to find arbitrary, like, identity and identity type little classifications, trying to get really, really precise with it, and then just not associate with anyone outside their little box. And I think it's silly and stupid and, harmful to us as a community.
Since we're sharing coming out stories, I actually came out 3 years ago. That's not to say that I've only known that I was trans for 3 years. I came out and started transitioning 3 years ago. And I'm originally from Phoenix, Arizona. And I lived in a part of Phoenix where I was the only trans person that I knew, the only out trans person. And that experience was so horrible, I almost went back into the closet. And it's really terrible when you can't find, the refuge in your own acronym, in your own local acronym. Being the only trans person in the local queer community was enough to make me want to go back in the closet. And so I came out here to the Bay Area, which, has been a lot better for me. It has not been a cakewalk, because the Bay Area is a queer mecca, but it is not necessarily a trans mecca.
Truth.